Hi, I'm Jessica Taylor.
I am Kalisha Woods.
Hi, I'm Emily Zadinsky.
Hi, I'm Portia Truesdale.
And we are Team 6 presenting the last unit of the course. The Horizon report that I really focused on this time around was I read the 2014 schools edition of the European Horizon report. And the article that really zoned into me was tablet computing. And just realizing how desktop computers are becoming so obsolete. At one point, that's all you saw in schools, in the computer lab and in the classroom. All you saw was actual desktop computers, and now things like tablets and iPhones and smartphones are coming into play in learning and in the classroom. Even myself today, I cannot stand actually working on a computer. If I have a choice, I'd rather use my tablet or my handheld notebook or something like that. I rarely even like working on my laptop. So it just shows how technology today, when it comes to learning and doing things for school, tablets are really taking over. In an article, it talked about how tablets, their sale rates are skyrocketing, and how PCs are just no longer really being sold or no longer being appealing to learners. So with the iPads, they're more appealing to use. They're sleek, they're small. You can slip it in your bag. You can slip it in some purses. You can slip it in. It's very portable. It's comfortable, and you can even send documents. Things like printing, if you would think you would need for a PC, you can even send documents from your iPad just to print. So it's very adaptable to whatever you need. You can pretty much do anything you would do on a PC. It's just faster and quicker. And I like that it opens up an opportunity for the one-to-one initiative, to where schools are actually providing students with their own handheld tablets to learn and use inside and outside of the classroom, which gives every child an opportunity to get that experience, no matter what their socioeconomic situation is. And also, children are used to working on those types of devices. So when you get kids to be able to use those in the classroom and introducing them to new curriculum, they'll be able to faster adapt to, what's being learned, because they're used to the medium being used. And the two standards that I like best that align with this article was standards for coaches, part A. So just using this kind of technology to contribute to and support all digital age communication and education for all students. Going back to that one-to-one initiative, giving the opportunity for all students to learn in this fashion. And also the standards for administrators, part A. So leading purpose will change to maximize the achievement of learning goals through appropriate use of technology. So educators are realizing that this is a good way to introduce kids to curriculum and allowing it to be used to further their education goals.
Okay, for this unit, I read the 2016 Higher Education Report's Key Trends. And so my approach to this was focusing on how closely the Higher Ed report relates to the K-12 report, because that's where I teach and that's where my students are. And so I just kind of focused on how they mirror each other. And so while I was reading it, it made me wonder like how prepared my students will be for the higher education trends that they're talking about. And then because my students are doing personalized and self-directed learning, it also made me wonder, are universities going to be ready for the kind of skills that they will already have, and will they have caught up to the skills my students are learning right now? And so some of the connections that I saw between the higher ed and the K-12 talked about advancing the cultures of innovation, and that was talked about in the K-12 report about collaborative learning and authentic learning experiences. There's a trend about rethinking how institutions work, and there is a similar trend about in the K-12 report about how rethinking how schools work and the role of teachers. And then they both had trends about redesigning the learning spaces of students, and that it can't really necessarily be, desks in a row in a K-12 school, or, tables set up that are just very stagnant and unable to move around without the technology ability, especially like Jessica was saying with the use of tablets and more portable technologies. And then the one that really stuck out to me had to do with the shift to deeper learning. And then one of the reasons I was thinking about that is that there were two quotes from the deeper learning one. And the first one said that surface learning involves students simply reproducing information to meet assessment demands, and that deeper learning compels students to focus on the meaning of the content. And it made me laugh because that's exactly the struggle that I have with my students. Their grade is three parts. It's based upon content assessments, which is the surface learning. They have to do projects and they have to do concept units. So they have to not only understand the surface knowledge, but then they have to apply it to these things. And so they're always trying to like rush through the content to do the assessments because they're like, ooh, I got an 80 on this test. I was like, well, that's great. That was the task. Do you understand the purpose of the task so you can do this concept unit? And they just kind of stare at me. I was like, how do you know that it works? And they're like, well, that's what I read. And I was like, but how do you know? So that just really kind of cracked me up. And so I kind of feel like showing this to them to be like, I'm not a crazy teacher just trying to get you to learn things for no reason. Like this is something that universities are finding to be more and more important. And so it's really hard to snap a student from being able to do well on a multiple choice test without understanding its deeper impact. And so for me, that the part about the shift to deeper learning was the most interesting and informative. And it also emphasized project-based learning. And so, like I said, my students have to do a project and it's 70% of their grade. And so they're trying to take these content assessments that are 20% of their grade and not really focusing on the deeper learning. And so it's a really hard struggle for them to understand which is more important and to focus. So I don't know, I found it funny and interesting, and I'm like, this is the story of my life right now. So.
I also chose to do the Key Trends in Accelerating Technology Adoption in Higher Education 2016. And one of the quotes that stuck out to me was that it was said by Dr. Hewlett, and it said, in order to remain motivated, students need to be able to make a clear connections between the curriculum and the real world and how that new knowledge and skills will impact them. So as I read through some parts of the article, I realized that it talked a lot about integrating entrepreneurship into higher education and it being a very big deal. So I related it back to when I was in my undergrad and doing my basics, how those classes weren't quite as interesting, weren't quite as captivating as my other ones that actually had to deal with my major. And it might have been because I didn't see a point in using it towards my education now. Some bits and pieces were, and those were the pieces that I was able to, further grasp. But those other ones that I was like, I know I'm not going to need this, it didn't really absorb as much as I would have hoped it would. So in order to have the students be successful, we need to learn about what they're going to see and what they will see in their career. And another thing was growing the focus on measuring learning. We have to think how we're going to measure mastery. So a lot of the stuff that's been online, I know a lot of our professors do blackboard and discussion boards, and we respond and have discussions like we would be in a regular classroom. So this is part of that adaptive learning and moving towards measuring learning, but doing it in an online blended course. I related that back to the ISTE standards for visionary leadership for coaches and administrators, because that is kind of what they're doing. They're integrating technology, promote the excellence, and support the transformation throughout the organization.
Okay, I did the readings on 2016. Can you see me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. 2016, it's Horizon Reports, K-12, long-term artificial intelligence. And it's, futuristic kind of thing. But it was interesting because with artificial intelligence, AI, it's pretty much machinery or software that resemble humans. And there's an article in NPR Ed called What Artificial Intelligence Could Mean for Education. And Google has AlphaGo, which is their AI, and it's pretty much self-learning with very little human assistance. So it's based on basically how the human brain works. And Pearson just issued a pamphlet on the argument of AI in education and how the software will, their predictions are it will bring feedback and instant feedback for students' progress, their state of mind, which would eliminate standardized testing. Well, with the problem with that is with the elimination of standardized testing would be the elimination of teachers. And that's one of the biggest fears, that it would replace teachers. However, teachers should be the center of the design, regardless of what tools are being used. And what I was reading was that as far as us as educators, our job is to make sure that we're creating tools that are more interactive for students, and building much better tools for students in the field of education. So those are some of the things that I had read, and I found it to be quite interesting.
Okay, I think that about wraps it up for Team 6 in our final unit. And this will be our last Horizon Report meeting. So it was great working with you guys. And I will see you again.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.